Welcome to the Built Not Born podcast presented by Edge Leadership Academy. I'm your host, David Kitchen, and every week I'm going to be having conversations with some of the top leaders in their fields to figure out what built them into the leaders they are today and what we can all take away from their journey. Thanks for joining us on this podcast. If you like what you hear, please share, like, and leave a review so we can continue to bring you more content like this. Also, make sure you join us on our website, www.edgeleadershipacademy.com, for a ton of free content and resources for leaders and those wanting to be leaders, and be sure to follow us on social media. I'm fired up to be part of this project, and I'm really looking forward to getting to work. Leaders are built, not born. Guys, welcome to another episode of the Built Not Born podcast. Man, this has been one I've been excited to get out there to people. I think, when we're putting these projects together, we're putting these guest lists together, there's certain people that just stand out to you that have been around some things and have experienced different cultures and have examples of leadership in their lives that we really want to highlight. And I think we have a guy here today that's going to do exactly that. So we're going to sit down today with Quinn Barham, who's an assistant strength coach for Ohio State football. He's now a Buckeye, former Nittany Lion. So we're going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Quinn. We're going to let him introduce himself, and then we'll jump into this thing.
First off, David, thanks for having me, man. This is a tremendous honor just to be thought of in that way. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate the listeners and watchers watching on video as well. My name is Quinn Barham, assistant strength coach at Ohio State football, and this is going into my sixth season in 2021. And I'm just very honored to be a part of such a great organization, a great group of people, and be able to serve these athletes. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina. And so went to Hillside High School, awesome career there and great time there, and was blessed to receive a scholarship to play football at Penn State. And so I played there from 2007 to 2011, graduated with a degree in kinesiology, and was blessed, fortunate enough to be elected captain by my peers, which is what I think is one of the highest honors you can receive by your teammates and your folks that you work with every single day, and to serve as a captain in that 2011 season, which is probably one of the most tumultuous times I've ever been in and been a part of. If you know some of that history at Penn State, had a great career there. Played offensive line, played center, guard, then started 2 years at left tackle, and kind of an undersized guy. So I took pride in leading and doing the best I could to make the most out of that position. After Penn State, had a shot at the NFL and had an undrafted free agent contract with Detroit Lions. And I was with them for a short period of time. That was in 2012 from April to June. So that was, OTAs and summer workouts, and a knee injury cut it short. So I figured, I want to get into strength conditioning, either physical therapy or strength conditioning. And I went back home to North Carolina and moved back in with my parents and kind of regroup. So from there, I was just volunteering at various universities in the area. So down there you have in the Triangle area of Raleigh-Durham, you have Duke University, North Carolina, NC State, North Carolina Central, North Carolina A&T, Wake Forest, so many schools. And I frequented each one, just volunteering and learning from different coaches while working at the grocery store, coaching high school football, trying to get certified. So I was doing that for a while and landed my first job in 2014 at UNC under Lou Hernandez and Coach Larry Fedora. 2015, went to right across the street to NC State under Coach Jason Velkamp and Coach Dave Dorn. And then 2016, by the grace of God, I found myself at Ohio State working under Coach Mickey Marotti, Coach Urban Meyer, and now led by Coach Ryan Day. So it's been a short but exciting career thus far, and I'm excited for the future.
Oh man, and that's so cool. And I always say this, man, I love hearing people's kind of origin stories because I think it tells you so much about A, what type of person they are, B, some of the experiences they've had. And then I think it kind of gives you a glimpse into like people that end up in positions such as the one you're in, some of the ones that I've been lucky enough to hold in my career. Like it's not by accident, and I think you brought up a great point there of like, you're working at grocery stores, you're doing all these different things. Like it's whatever it takes to get the dream done. And I think that speaks in itself to leadership, you know. So I want to use that as kind of a segue into this first kind of topic that we're going to talk about, and that's your influences, man. I think, you know, I come from the camp of leaders are built, not born, and that's actually the slogan of our company. Like, that's what we believe. These skills are learned, whether you're consciously learning them or subconsciously. So I want to ask you, you know, who had the biggest influence in your life growing up, and as you kind of went through your career even, and kind of what values do you think you took from some of those people?
That's a great question. As far as influences, one, I pride myself on learning. I like to read. I like to listen to people. And I believe that you can learn from anyone and everyone, whether you learn what to do or you learn what not to do. So I try to pick up things from every single person I come in contact with. And as far as influences, number one, I would say is my grandfather. He passed away back in September of last year, 91 years old. And so he was always there. And so as I learned about leadership and as I learned about those characteristics, I saw those same characteristics in my grandfather. He took care of his family. He worked every single day. He was a man of integrity. He was a military man. He was a prompt man. He was a dependable, trustworthy, knowledgeable. He was a community man. He was a family man. So many different characteristics that made him special that I didn't really recognize until I got older and then when he was gone. And so between my grandfather, my father, various coaches throughout my career, I just off the top of my head right now, Coach Mickey Marotti, just seeing how consistent he is in how he attacks his day every single day. This man is probably the most consistent people I've ever seen in my short time on earth here. Tim Kite is a big influence on me and his leadership information that his material. So many people. Oh my gosh. John Maxwell, D'Antonio Burnett at NC State, Jason Veldkamp, Lou Hernandez, Malcolm X. So many people who just have impacted me just through their work and then through what they've given and the legacies that they've left. I mean, I find myself watching these videos over and over again of how these people carried themselves. Great speakers, T.D. Jakes, Devon Franklin, religious folks, so many people. And I think the common thread in a lot of them, as I come into knowledge of it, is the number one influence is God. And if you really get into the word in the Bible and you look at what God does for his people, does for us, these are all the characteristics of these great men and women over time. So God would probably be the number one influence. But if I had to break it down into folks on earth that I've come across and spent time around, that list that I gave you would be those people.
There's no doubt, man. And I think, you know, I say it all the time, and I firmly believe this, like whether you're religious or not, the story of Jesus and the Bible and scripture is the original leadership narrative. Like it's that's where it all stems from, you know, and it's laid out, and the principles of servant leadership and all those things are laid out for us in scripture. So whether you're religious or not, even if you're just a leadership buff, like read it, because there's so much information in there. And then what you see and what I really want to hit on here that I think is so cool that you brought up, like you didn't realize that you were taking these lessons from your grandfather, from your father, when you were, because it was just part of their character. It was just who they were. And ultimately being able to take those, you know, and it's like the Instagram picture that goes around, right, where it's the picture of the father and he's got holes all in his body, and then it's the picture of the son and he's built from all those holes, right? So it's the same thing. Like you take things from the people around you and you're able to mold this you know, kind of group of characteristics together and these traits. And ultimately you're able to put them to good use. But it takes special people like yourself to be able to recognize those things and say, hey, that's a characteristic that I need to hold on to. That's a characteristic that I need to hold on to, and then build upon throughout your career. So I was going to ask what made you want to lead and coach, but it almost sounds like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it almost sounds like it's just what you do. It's what your family taught you to do, is to lead, you know, from a young age. And so, you know, again, you can kind of fill in the gaps here, but it sounds to me like the natural progression for you was to become a leader of some sort, and it sounds like you were trained to do that from a very young age.
Yeah, it's funny you say it like that, because growing up, church members and just community folks, and this is from young age. I always took a liking to helping classmates and helping folks that maybe didn't have, who weren't as privileged as I was, didn't have what I have growing up. Whether it's you didn't have a father around, or you maybe folks with disabilities or whatever. I always gravitated towards those people, and I realize now that I had something that they didn't, but I wanted to give what I had to them in whatever way I could at that time. So people always say, like, you ever thought about going to teaching, going into coaching? And I'm like, when it came to teaching, I'm like, no, because I immediately thought about at a young age, I'm thinking, oh, teachers don't make that much money, long hours, and they got to deal with folks like me, So, but now I'm 31, and I'm like, and you look at the role of a coach, that's what you do. You teach. You help guide folks from where they are to where they want to be, and help them get there. So I think teaching and leading has been, like you said, has been a part of my family and how I was brought. I just didn't know how to put it in words, but it's just always been in my actions. Even as a teammate, I tried to be a guy that knew what was going on so I could help somebody else. If we got the schedule for the weekend, it was a little note card, and I always kept it in my pocket over the weekend, so I knew where we had to be, what time, and those type of things. And you had teammates who lost the card, and hey, come on, you got that card? Where we supposed to be at 3 p.m.? Come on, we're supposed to be at the buses, man. What are you doing? But that's the type of guy I was, and I'm the same way now. And I pride myself on just being able to help other people, and using whatever strengths I have to help them in what they don't have.
And I think this is a cool thing that I it just made me think of this as you were telling that story. Like, so many people at a young age are afraid to help others in a way because they're afraid that it's going to dim their own light. Versus for you, it seems like you gained energy from that, and you started, like, you see other people succeeding because you were able to help them, and it almost fueled the fire, right? And as you kept going, so I think that's a really, really cool concept that you internalize at a young age, that it's not about me, and someone else's success doesn't take away from my own.
No.
You were able to use that as almost a springboard. Like, hey, if I can bring more people to the mountaintop with me, we all eat. You know what I mean? And I think that's something we need to teach our youth at a younger age. And I think it's something we should do a better job of, which is why I'm so happy to have people like you that are coaching. The other thing that I really took away from that story was my first mentor told me when we started our first day, he said, "What do you do for a living?" I said, "I'm a strength coach." He said, "Wrong." I said, "Excuse me, I'm standing in a weight room. It's 5 a.m. I'm pretty sure I'm a strength coach."
Yeah.
He said, "You're an educator. That's what you are. You are an educator." And I think that piece of coaching is sometimes lost. Like, people think that we just do, sets and reps, or we just do, if you're on the field coach, we're just doing hand placement and scheme. No, man, we're educating. We're teaching life lessons. We're teaching things that translate far beyond, but you have to be able to communicate those things, and you have to be humble enough to, again, know that it doesn't take away from you by helping someone else be successful. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us. It never has been. It never will be. That's just the way it is. And so I think to hear you say that stuff again just reminds me of why I did what I did for so long, and as far as coaching, and why now I'm doing what I'm doing here. Is like, it's not about me, man. It's about if I can bring other people along, and if we can bring other people along, that's ultimately what this thing's about. And so we'll use the college piece here. We'll transition into talking a little bit about, as you learn that leadership at that level. I think this is pretty cool too. So you were a captain at Penn State. Obviously, there's a ton of tradition there. One of the most noted programs in the nation. One of the most tradition heavy. I grew up a Penn State fan, so I know that emotion and that feeling that exists in Happy Valley is different than almost anywhere. And I'm sure now Ohio State definitely rivals that, if not more. But when you come through there and there's these great players that you see on the wall, you see, a LeVar Arrington, you see some of the guys that came before you, Darrell Clark, some guys like that. What are some of the lessons you took away from that? Like where did you learn? What are some of the biggest things that you took away that you look back and you're like, hey man, I learned that in State College. Like this piece of it was something that came with me from wearing that blue and white.
Oh, wow. Best 5 years of my life thus far. And Coach Paterno, I was fortunate enough to play for him all 5 of my years there. And he had what was called the Grand Experiment. The Grand Experiment was to gather a group of young men from all over the country, different walks of life, different backgrounds, bring them together and to make them productive members of society through sport. And a common theme, if you ever meet Penn State football lettermen, we all carry ourselves a certain way. We walk a certain way, we talk a certain way. And a lot of times you might not have, aside from our stature, you might not know that we played football at Penn State. But it's a common theme of how can I add value to those around me? How can I be an example in how I look, how I work, how I carry myself, how I speak, how I think? And so that was one thing that Coach Paterno tried to instill in us soon as we got there. I mean, and it was a very strict program, but if you don't have that discipline to keep you in line, you're going to go wayward. You're going to go all over the place, and you won't have that foundation to keep you where you need to be. And so that's one thing I learned there. I learned so many leadership skills and so many things. You know, I never wanted to let my teammates down. As an offensive lineman, that's probably one of the most selfless positions on the field. You're blocking so everyone else can get their job done. You're I mean, I broke my ankle there. I pulled a pec. I broke a finger. I did so many things, but it was because I didn't want to let my brothers and my teammates and the organization and the university down. They want to let my family down. So I learned independence there, aside from my parents, but I learned independence. I learned, how to just live on my own. Because that's what college teaches you. If you really use college for what it is, and move away and really learn about yourself, you will see the fruits of that. And that's one of the things I saw from Penn State. And like I said, now I try to be a guy that's trustworthy, that's dependable, that knows what he's doing, so that I can help others reach their goals.
Yeah, and it's so cool to see that, because when you walk into a program like that, and this is someone from the outside looking in, like, I feel like there would be such a pressure to maintain the standard, and to really live up to these things that came before you and the people that came after. I think that's really, for me, for a 17 to 22-year-old young man to be able to take that on. There has to be some leadership there to show you the way. So talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, some of the experiences that you had. Like, what was the culture like with the older guys? Like, did they show you the way? Like, how did you step into that role? Obviously, to go from being that young guy to end up being a senior leader. Like, who were the people that kind of pulled you along, and what did that process look like? Was it meetings with coaches? Were there leadership councils? What are the things that set you up to be that captain?
Definitely the older players. And the older players, they were hard on you, they were tough on you, but they eventually showed you the way when they saw that you were able to handle it. So we're all kids at that age, but guys like Daryl Clark and Kevin Cousins and oh my gosh, um, who else came? Stefan Wisniewski. So many guys that I played with that just took me along and showed me the way. And in the beginning, they were tough. I mean, it wasn't any form of hazing, but let's make it hard on him and see what he's made of.
Right.
And then when you see what he's made of as a freshman, okay, we got somebody to work with. All right, he's gonna be all right in a couple of years. But they set things up where it was definitely hard on you, and you had to learn. Throughout my life, I've kind of learned trial by fire. So they kind of just throw you in there, see how you do, and then they pull you out the fire and then help you learn how to survive in the fire, work in the fire. And so that's what those guys did. And we tried to do the same thing with the freshmen that came up under us. Maybe certain methods I didn't agree with, But okay, how can I be this guy for the next freshman, and for Donovan Smith, for Gerald Hodges and guys that come up under me? Like, how can you be that guy for them, but be even better than the upperclassmen that helps you? And so we weren't perfect. Nobody really knew, but we had great leaders and great examples in our coaches. I mean, these coaches have been around for at least 30, 40 years at the time. Coach Paterno was 85. My position coach, Bill Kinney, he was, I believe, in his 50s, 60s. Dick Anderson, he was in his 70s when I was there. So you had established men. Coach Larry Johnson, he was there, who was our D-line coach at Ohio State. He was there. He was a big influence also. So you have men who they've been in the game for a while and they know what they're doing. They're family men. They're successful men. So when you have those various examples, you can't help but to be like that. Right. Yeah, you have some knuckleheads, but the whole point of getting those knuckleheads was to eventually straighten them out. But you had so many examples at Penn State at the time, and I think they still have people like that there that can help these men get in line and thrive as they go through the program and leave the program.
100%. And I think, what I'm taking away from this is it's almost like, and I think there should be in any great culture, there's a vetting process. Like, you don't let just anyone into the culture. And when I say into the culture, I mean really into the mix. Like, you're always going to have, the bell curve of people. There's always going to be those low performers that are kind of hanging on the edge and just along for the ride. And a lot of them don't last long in great cultures. But I think, what you're saying here with the older guys is like, they throw you in the fire because they're almost vetting you. Like, how deep can this be a guy that drives the culture in the future? Can this be, or is he just going to be a guy that's just going to be here? He's going to be part of it. He's going to do what he's going to do. He's going to help us win. He's going to do this, but he's not necessarily going to be a guy that's going to protect and be a guardian of our culture. And I think what happens is over time, when there's great cultures like that, you become protective of it. Like, somebody handed the torch to you, you have to hand it to someone else. And it's exactly what you said. I want to make sure that they have even a better understanding. They're set up for even more success than I was set up for, not because it's for me, but because this thing matters. This thing that is built here, you're being entrusted with it. And so it's my job to make sure that you're as ready as possible to pick that torch up and lead this program moving forward. Yeah. And I think that's a really cool thing that starts to happen in great cultures, is that it becomes so important to people that not just anybody is let in, and you have to earn your way in.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it was burning in me, man. The culture at Ohio State right now, and I came into it in 2016, and as you spend time in it and learn more about it, and you become a part of it, you don't let anybody mess with it. You don't let anybody touch it. You don't let anybody tamper with it. You don't let anybody disrespect it. And it becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a part of your DNA. And so when new freshmen come in, when visitors come in, when anybody, family, anybody, when you're that invested into your program, into your culture, and you know what makes it work, you know what makes it's successful, you don't let anybody come in and disrespect it and desecrate it. You just can't. And so, like I said, if anybody's coming in to visit, hey, can I take a picture of this? Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, can I go in this room? No. And just certain things they don't know. Young players, we have a certain set of rules and standards in our program. One thing is what we call +2. And that's just teaching you how to finish. Go beyond the whistle. Go 2 yards beyond the finish line. Basically overdo your job within the confines of the rules. And so when you see a person not follow that standard, not follow those rules, you take it personally because you know things like that keep your culture running smoothly. So when you're a part of an organization like that, whether it's your business, your company, your classroom, your whatever, your staff you're a part of, really understand what makes your culture run. Don't just be a participant in it, be a part of it and immerse yourself in it, and you see why they're successful, why they aren't. And then once you find that, you become that and work to become what that is. And then when the next person comes in, when that new person comes in, when that young person comes in, you're able to show them like, hey, this is what makes this place great. And this is what we do. This is how we do it. You got to fall in line if you want to be a part of this. And if you can't do it, if you don't want to do it, then okay, well, you got to go. But we got something special here. You know, we're making a lot of money. We made a lot of sales this year. We made a lot of profit. We won a lot of games. We don't let somebody come in and mess this up. And that's what those older guys did for me at Penn State. That's what Coach Mickey Marotti and Coach Urban Meyer and those various coaches at Ohio State have done. And they're consistently doing it year after year. So when it comes to these new players and new staff members, you know, you got to make sure you're tough on them because what you have is special and valuable.
Dude, you got me jacked up, man. Now I'm ready to run through a wall after listening to that, man. That's big time stuff. And I think to build upon it, I want to hear a little bit more because you got me thinking now. Like, you've been part of multiple conference championship, national championship appearances, the highest stage. Like, talk to me about the process of continuing that culture and continuing that tradition at Ohio State, and also like building and maintaining. Like, you guys have a culture there that never seems to graduate. Like it's continuous, you know what I mean? So talk to me kind of, what do you guys do without giving away the secret sauce, but like, what do you guys do to maintain that? What is the intentional? Cause it's gotta be intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. Just talk to me about some of the things that you guys do to maintain that culture year after year after year.
Well, our culture is simple, and it is the word fight. We break down on fight every single day, every single practice, and you're fighting to be the best. You're fighting to be the best version of yourself every single day. And in life, it is a struggle. It is a fight. It's a fight to maintain integrity. It's a fight to survive. It's a fight to keep what you have. It's a fight to get more. It's a fight to be a great husband, to be a great son. I mean, to be a great teammate. It's a fight to be great at your career. So our culture is fight. And we teach our guys how to fight, when to fight, understand what they're fighting for, who they're fighting with, who they're fighting for, and how that looks. And so we have, you know, various behaviors under each category. But you want to fight for the man next to you, whether it's the strength staff next to me, whether it's the players that I have to serve every single day. Of the coaching staff. How do you fight? You give everything you have every single play. You go as hard as you can with relentless effort, what we call 4 to 6 A to B, and +2. Like I said, like I explained before, +2 means finishing, going beyond what's required of you. And you know, who do you fight for? What we call is power of the unit, which is you fight for the person next to you. You fight for your unit. You fight for your brothers, your family. So it's a variation of fight. And like I said, it builds off of itself each year because you're fighting for, you know, you're fighting for the same thing as a team, whether it's a championship or things like that, or just winning games, but you're fighting with a different group of people every single year. And you have to teach them how to do that. And each fight is kind of different. It's never the same fight. So you might have to train slightly different. You might have to train, you might have to think differently. You might have to learn differently. And that's all part of the fight culture of who we are at Ohio State.
Man, I love that. I'm over here writing notes because it got my brain thinking immediately. So when you guys say fight, and this is where I think some coaches might miss, man, like fight is a very simple word. And I'm sure it's all over your facility. Am I right that the word fight is pretty present? And so it's one word, it's on the wall, but you guys take it from the wall to the heart. Like it go, you know what I mean? It's not just a word on a wall, man. It's your stated culture. That's your stated culture. We fight here, but it's also your experience culture. Cause it's also what's going on a day to day, and it's exhibited in behaviors, habits, clear expectations. You know, these things are so clear that's why that takes on the meaning that it does. And so for all the coaches and teachers and administrators listening, before you slap something on a wall, ask yourself exactly what Quinn just said. Can I lay out behaviors in each type of category that reflect this culture and reflect who we are and what we are? If that word or that phrase doesn't fit that, don't use it. You know, let it be just something you throw to the side. Pick something that fits and you can explain it clearly in each way. Like you're talking about all these different types of fights. Like, who are you fighting for? What are you fighting? How does that look? It's step by step. It's almost like a manual. Like, this is our culture. This is how you ingrain it in your character. So by the time you put that block O on, you know who you are, and you understand it. And it really, really is who you are. So I think that is so cool. And the way you said this, that it's different every time, right? So fight. And I think, again, this is where people kind of miss when you assign these, you know, whether we call them hashtags, whatever. I call it a stated culture. When you assign these things, it can look different for different people. So, for example, your fight looks different than Coach Mick's, right? Your fight looks different than Coach Dave's, but at the base level, at the fundamental level, you guys are fighting for the same thing.
Exactly.
So for those coaches that put out there, like, another one is one heartbeat. That's another big one that a lot of people use. One heartbeat can mean something completely different for 5 different people on the team, but as long as fundamentally it's the same thing governed by the same values, it'll be successful.
That's right.
You know, so I think that's what's so cool about what you guys have going at Ohio State, man. That is absolutely if I could define, you know, how to implement culture and what it should look like, what you just talked about is exactly it. Like, it's got to be clear. It's got to be non-negotiable. It's got to be something that everybody can take and internalize, and then you fight for it, right? It goes from the head to the heart. When you talk about it, it's in the head. By the time you start believing it and behaving it daily, it's in the heart, man. That's absolutely awesome.
You said daily. That's a key word, because culture is so important, and it gets thrown around a lot. But I think people don't really understand, to maintain that culture, what happens. You have to do it daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, yearly, because if not, you're influenced by different things. Different things catch your attention. If you don't have that culture instilled in you every single day, if you don't live it every single day and speak it and think it and breathe it every single day, you're easily influenced by other things. And that's why I think Coach Mick is he's outstanding, because every single day he doesn't let up, every single day. And so as coaches, as his assistants, and as leaders on the team, we can't let up. Every single day we have to live that culture and fight, because as soon as the players see us stop fighting, they're going to stop. But like last year, you had COVID, you had COVID outbreaks, you had games canceled. And as soon as a player saw a coach drop his head, you saw players drop their heads. But if coaches walked around with their chin high, tall posture, smiles on their faces, despite what's going on, the players do the same thing. And that's part of fighting every single day. And that's what you have to do. You have to do it every single day. And it may become watered down, but I think your culture is intact, at least in what I've seen. I think your culture is intact when you see it, when you see the behavior from your players. But when you get to the point where the players are mocking you and repeating that same word and how you say it and some of the same phrases, you got something.
Yep. Players
will mock Coach Mick. They will repeat things he says and kind of make fun of him. And I saw with Coach Dave, even Coach Meyer, players will say the same thing they say and how they say it, but you know that they're listening.
Yep.
And you know that they're being fed that message over and over and over again. And if it goes into their subconscious mind, when I'm in that adverse situation, when I'm out on High Street on Saturday night, and I might be, might have some liquor in my system, or if I'm under a heavy bar, if fight and whatever that culture is embedded into my brain, I can tap into that, and I won't let that circumstance defeat me. So that's why culture is so important, because when you get into those challenges, what can you rely on? You rely on how you've been trained.
Dude, 100%, man. And as soon as you said that about players mocking you and it's starting to get ingrained in you. So when I was coaching at Susquehanna, D3 schools, my alma mater. So obviously, for me, it's something special to get the opportunity to coach your alma mater. And we had our football program in there. One of our big phrases was always, I always said, it's not you versus anybody. It's you versus the boogeyman. It's you versus your demons. And I always said, you versus the boogeyman, you versus the boogeyman. When they got ready for their bowl game, they got snubbed, got left out of the Division III playoffs, even though they were top 5 in every offensive and defensive category. So that's a whole nother podcast we could get into. But when they got selected for the bowl game, somebody asked them, one of the school media people asked, who do you care who you play or whatever? And the captain of the team said, doesn't matter who we play the boogeyman. It's us versus the boogeyman. And I'm like, oh, there it is. Well, they came out in the bowl game, and I don't quote me on this number, but it was like 84-3. Mm-hmm. I mean, they hung 70, 80 points and showed the nation, hey, we should have been in the playoffs. So it's exactly what you're talking about. It's internalized. That's who they were. They're fighting the boogeyman, and it's the same way you say, we fight, man. It doesn't matter what the circumstance is. The message is the same. The values are the same. And so it's so cool to see that when it starts to get rolling, and you can attest to this, when you start to see culture roll, it's a really fun experience for a coach, because you're like, man, y'all better watch out. You don't even know what's brewing over here. You don't like you knew in October, November, even during that waiting period that you guys saw, you knew something special was going on in that group. You knew that, you know what I mean? There's no doubt. And so for people that are outside the culture, and they might say, we're shocked. You weren't, right? Because you see it you see the daily behaviors that reinforce it. And I think that, man, that's, as a coach, that's such a special feeling, to see that and be able to be a part of it. So talk to me a little bit about the role that you as a strength and conditioning coach plays in building and maintaining that culture, especially like during the season. Cause I know the time starts to get a little bit more limited that you get with the guys, like during summer and off season, during the winter, mat drills, that kind of stuff. You spend a lot of time. It kind of gets cut down a little bit during the season. Now you guys are at practice and all those things, but what does that look like? What do you guys do from a strength staff side that really reinforces and grows that culture?
Yeah, that's part of our job. Our job is to instill, enforce, and maintain that culture. We want to be almost the second voice of the head coach and be an extension of the head coach. So when the coaches aren't there, when they're off recruiting, vacation, or whatever they're doing, and we're the ones with the guys every single day, that is our job. Yes, our job is to train you and to improve your performance and prevent injury, but we have to instill and maintain that culture, and players have to know it. So, every day before each workout, Coach Mick will bring the guys up, bring the group up to his board, and he has some message for them, but it'll be about the workout, about training, but he'll always have a message that is about a variation of the culture, how it looks for that day. Let's say whatever that focus is, like, this week or next 2-3 weeks, let's focus on being a great teammate, fight to be a great teammate, fight to be more selfless in training, and show them how to do that. So every day it's an everyday thing for us, and we try to make sure we do that through training. So if you see a guy, let's say if you're trying to teach guys how to work on their posture as they accelerate in running, how can you fit the culture into that? And then, so we encourage our players to coach each other. So if we have a line where, let's say you and I are partners on a sled sprint, I'm running, and you're going watching. We don't expect you to just stand there and just watch. We expect you to coach me up. We expect you to give me cues. We expect you to look for deficiencies. And it's our job to teach you how to look for those things and then what to say. Because a lot of times in training, players don't know what to say. They don't know, how should I behave? How should I act? What should I say? And you don't want robots in there. You want guys who love what they're doing, who embrace the adversity and develop. But you have to teach them how to do that. They don't know. So how we do that in training is we teach each athlete to be a coach and to look for things that don't fit within the model that we're trying to create. And so we teach each other, and we want to create other teachers and other coaches in the weight room with the players.
100%, man. And you hit on, I wrote that down word for word almost. That was big time. you hit on something in there that I think is so huge in successful cultures is the feedback piece from everybody, right? It's not certain guys. So talk to me a little bit, like, are there things that you do to teach your players to receive feedback? Because I've found in my own coaching experience, a lot of times that's where guys struggle and young ladies struggle, is both feeling capable. You give them the tools to give the feedback. How do you teach the other people to receive the feedback? Like, is there something you guys do to address that? So to kind of paint a picture for you, like, if you understand that I'm supposed to have my back flat on this sled drill and my back's not flat, or I'm supposed to hinge at the hip and I'm not hinged, and you come over and you say, hey man, hey dog, you got to hinge. Let's go. How do you teach that person that's on the receiving end of that to receive the feedback, not take it personally, and then put it into action? Because I think that's a missing piece a lot of times for kids.
That's a great point. I see it time and time again. And we coach aggressively. And our staff, we coach aggressively. And I'm learning that a lot of players don't know how to receive it. Some, they may receive it, bow up and let's go. Some, they miss the message and they only hear your tone. They hear that tone and it's like, oh my God, I feel like I'm getting attacked. And I have to check myself, because clearly my message didn't get through to that athlete, and it was probably my tone. So I have to check myself. So when it comes to that feedback or receiving that feedback, that's a great point. And a formal way of teaching that, we haven't. But we have taught our players, when it comes to leadership development with our players, how to speak to each other. You can still speak aggressively and be assertive without being disrespectful.
Right.
Sure. People think that if I use profanity, that can help drive my message. But you don't have to. If anything, profanity might offend the person and feel like they're being disrespected. Whereas you can use the inflection in your voice or use the intensity in your voice to get your message across, and you reach that person. So we teach guys, if anything, in our leadership development with our players, we teach them how to deliver that message so that can be received. It can be received without offending. So as far as how to receive that feedback, that's a good one. I got to think on that, because how do you teach that? I think if that person receiving it understands that, hey man, I'm your teammate, I love you, I'm just trying to get you better. I tend to see that a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas, and it's kind of after the fact. Let's say after the workout's over, after the fight is over, it's like, hey man, I kind of, I ain't mean to talk to you like that, but you had to go harder that moment, man. Like I needed you then. And next thing you talk about it afterwards. But in that moment where emotions are high and it's hot in there, it's hard. It's hard, especially, with the aggression of a sport like football.
Mm-hmm. The reason I brought that up is because I get that question a lot. I was just giving a workshop on leadership. I do the leadership development as well. So I was just doing a workshop, and one of the athletes asked me, coach, how do we teach our teammates to receive feedback? And the only answer that I could give them was relationship, trust. That was the only thing that I could give them. Was they need to know that at the end of the day, I'm holding you accountable because I want you to be a part of the success that we're going to have. But in order for you to be a part of it, you got to do X, Y, and Z. And I need that from you right now. And I said, the other thing is the relationship has to be, I hate to use the word transactional, but there has to be a transactional aspect to it, meaning that you have made deposits into that relationship in the past that now you can make a big withdrawal, like holding someone accountable when it's hot. You know what I mean? Because if you didn't, then it's not going to go well, So I tell them all the time, it's like going to the ATM. If I don't make deposits, I can't go to the ATM and ask for $10,000. And when you're holding somebody accountable and holding their feet to the fire, especially holding them publicly accountable in front of other teammates, that's a big withdrawal from that account.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big withdrawal. And so you better have the funds that you put in ahead of time to be able to do something like that. Right. And so I think, dude, it's something that as coaches we battle with. How do we teach that? And I don't know that there's a right answer. And so my answer is always relationships. It's always start from the beginning, lead from the inside out. It has to be that way.
It makes me think about what Tim Kite has taught us. when it comes to building trust. And it's three things: your character, your competence, and a connection. So to build trust and enhance that relationship, people have to experience your character. They have to experience your competence. And do you know what you're doing as a coach? Have you shown them that you know how to train, how to develop people, physically? And then your connection. Do you connect? Do you all see eye to eye on something? Do you connect on some common ground? So when you meet those three C's, this character, competence, and connection, and people experience those three things out of you, that's when they learn they learn trust. They learn how to trust you. And like you said, it doesn't happen at one time. It happens over time and almost subconsciously. But you have to understand that in order for this athlete to respond to me, in order for my teammate to receive aggressive coaching, aggressive feedback, they have to experience my character. They have to experience my competence. They have to experience a connection. And when you have those things, okay, cool. I can let you yell at me. I can let you speak to me in an aggressive manner because you want the best for me. And you see through, I can see through your tone, and I see through your words. I'm sorry, I can see through your tone and I understand your words.
Yep, that's exactly it, man. And it's crazy you say the three C's, man, because I teach something five C's, and it's along the same lines. So these principles of leadership and these principles of relationship and trust and stuff, like we're all teaching the same concepts because they transcend. They go beyond just the sport and just what we're doing. But I love that you keep talking about this leadership development stuff. So I want to hear a little bit, again, without giving away the secret sauce. What does that look like for your program? Is that something that just coaches go through? Is it something that just the players go through? Give me just kind of a 30,000-foot view, because it sounds like it's very intentional on your end, and I know some of the work that Tim does there is phenomenal. If you haven't checked out his stuff, you need to, because the guy is a genius. So just talk to me a little bit about what that looks like and how Ohio State invests in developing leaders.
Yeah, we try to have a system. And the system is the E plus R equals O model from Tim Kite. And it starts with the coaches. And so we meet and we try to figure out, okay, what does our team need? What are we missing? What are we, now that we're going into 2021, what is, we have a new team. What are we missing? What do we need? What are we lacking? And so you bring that to Tim, and then he speaks to the staff. We have staff meetings first, and you address those things. And then he does he reteaches E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome. And he teaches that to us over and over again, the different steps to be successful at it. Then the position coaches, they take it to their position, to their linebacker coach. Al Washington takes it to his group. Coach Stud, O-line coach, takes it to his group. Strength staff, we take it and we work at it amongst ourselves, and even work at it with our interns that we have. But Tim comes in, teaches it to us in increments and in segments, and then we go address it. And he challenges us. How does press and pause look in your life? How does press and pause look when dealing with a certain athlete? How does seeking clarity, how does that look? So he challenges us to see it in our life, and then we're able to take it to the players. So he wants to make sure that we have it down first, before we go to the players. And then Coach Day, he'll address the team. He'll have Tim address the team, and then Coach Day will address the team later on in increments, teaching those same different concepts. And Coach Mick does an awesome job in the off season as well. So we try to hit guys with it year round, with those type of lessons.
And that's big time. And it's so big when you have everybody preaching the same message and everybody's clear on the message. It's a common language within your program. And I think that's speaks volumes of the type of organization that you guys have there at Ohio State, and the fact that you've recognized that, hey, we need to invest in this, and that it is such an integral part of what you guys do. And guys, if you're listening to this, if you're a high school coach, if you're a club coach, whatever, and you're saying we don't need to spend time on this, guys, you can't argue with the result, man. You can't. I mean, if
Right.
you put the time in and you put the correct people in the correct places, obviously y'all do a hell of a job recruiting as well. But what do you do with them once you get there? You know what I mean? You develop men, you develop leaders, you develop these things. So for you coaches that are out there that are like, man, we don't need to spend time on culture, or I'm just going to have a one meeting thing. This is one of the best programs in the nation doing it year round. You don't just, it's like planting a crop, man. There's always something to be done. There's always, whether you're tilling, watering, weeding, you're doing something always to get ready for the harvest. And that's phenomenal to hear that, man. So that go ahead. Yeah.
And in terms of building leadership and leadership development in your program, especially working with young people and even with older people, one of the easiest ways to do that is to put them in front of the group. Justin Fields is a quiet guy. He's a very low-key dude. He loves ball, loves his teammates, but he's a soft-spoken guy. And we want our best players and our older players to get in front of the team and talk in front of the team, because guys that have played a lot of ball, they understand why we train how we train. They understand they go through the fire of what we call a crucible in terms of training, and a crucible of the game, and a crucible of the adversity that comes with the game. And so a lot of players don't understand that. So we want to put guys like Justin Fields, who's a quiet guy, put him in front of the team, get him to talk in front of the team, because over time, the message from the coaches, it gets watered down. They get tired of hearing from us. But as soon as they hear from their peers, the guy that's in it with them, that's in the fire with them, that's when you get 10 times more buy-in, because you heard it from your best player. You heard it from your leader. And even if he was uncomfortable getting in front of the team, we at least gave him a script, keywords, things to hit on, so that the message, even though let's say we wrote the message, it came from him. So then he gets in front of the team, he gets better from it, and then the team receives the message from him, which makes everyone better, creates the buy-in. And then you see some guys who know Justin, hey, that's not like Justin, get in front of the team. That inspires them.
Right.
He did it, maybe I can do it.
Right.
So that's kind of how we do it. We put guys in front of the team and talk. Speak what's on your heart. And whatever comes out, comes out. But we're going to lead you and guide you on how to speak and how to do that. So organizations and teams, coaches, you got to teach your people how to do that. But you also have to give them the opportunity to do it and see how they do. If they don't do it as well, coach them up, correct them. But if they do well, keep doing that.
And I think so. We'll get on a little tangent here, me and you, because I think you just said something right there. Coach them up. So when we're in the weight room, man, everything we do from a strength and conditioning standpoint is tested, measured. There's data, it's analyzed. But I see so many places where coaches leave leadership. They just give the talk, and then they just expect it to go. Like, we're not measuring it. And by you saying exactly what you just said, right? So you taught Justin the lessons. You put him up in front of the team. You let that test day. Let's see how you do. Now let's give him feedback on it. Let's measure it. Let's measure how the team responded to it. Let's measure it. Let's give him feedback on the performance. And now let's give him another opportunity to do it. And then let's let him teach it to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that's got to be the system, just like it is with us. Like when we start with speed work, right? We start with the start. We let them do 5 yards. Then we do falling starts, and we do all these things. And then we test it, we measure it, we give it feedback, we analyze it. And then finally we let them rip. And I think that's for leadership, it shouldn't be any different. You know what I mean? I think there's got to be a system in place. And what you're talking about is exactly that, man. That's how you develop leaders. That's how it becomes a team full of leaders. Now it's not just one room. It's not just one player. It's a team full, because we're developing each other. Iron sharpens iron, right? And that's the way to go about it, man. That's big time stuff. That's big time stuff. So I want to ask you real quick before we get you out of here. I know you're a busy man. I got about 4 questions left for you, real quick ones. This first one here, standards are a buzzword, right? Everybody wants to talk about standards. Everybody wants to say, in leadership and culture, we have this standard, we set these standards, and sometimes they end up looking like rule manuals. So I want to hear a little bit about how you guys determine your standards? And then what do those look like when you're enforcing them? Like, what is it on a daily basis? Are there actual tasks that are standards? Is it like, hey, you're expected to be here 17 minutes or 18 minutes early? What is it? What are some of the key standards that you guys hold?
Well, we have goals for each player, and you have goals as a team, and we try to establish those at the beginning of the year. Like right now, we're meeting as a staff to figure out, what do we want? And one of our main goals in terms of football is, well, we have quite a few, but we want to get to Indy. We know that Indy is where the Big Ten championship is played.
Mm-hmm.
You know that if we get to Indy, do well at Indy, we set ourselves up for success. He's going to the postseason. But even before getting to Indy, you got to beat your rival. So that's something we enforce year long. So you have these goals as a team, and then you have goals individually. So we have standards in the weight room, kind of based off of previous performances, combine performances, and those are the standards that we want our guys to measure up to. But those standards are kind of really subjective in terms of each player. Like, as a wide receiver, he may bench press 225 10 times. And while we may want more, but we give a range for that standard. If he meets that, I'm good. Try to improve it, yes. But each player has those different standards. And so we're very transparent. And we want everyone to know what each guy's goals are physically. What your body weight needs to be by the end of winter off season. What your body fat needs to be, what maybe a squat number should be, maybe a 3 to 5 rep max number should be for you. So everyone sees it. We're very transparent with it. So the standard is very, very high for us. And if there's any deviation from that standard, as far as the fight culture, as far as the effort you give, the attitude you have, and how tough you are in training, there's a standard for that for us in the weight room. And if you don't meet that, then you're going to be talked to about it. Yeah. So we instill that every single day, but it varies. It varies with different circumstances. So, you teach guys, like as soon as the freshmen get here, we're going to teach them about the red line. And for us, the red line is a line that's outside the field. And that's on our indoor fields or our outside fields. So when you pass that red line, nothing else matters except football. Nothing else matters except what you're doing on that field. Homework, that stays outside the red line. Classwork, family, all that stays outside the red line. When you cross that red line, it's all business. And 100%, 4 to 6, A to B, that's when the culture really has to be what we say it is. So things like that. Like I said, the red line is one of the standards we have. Just being, understanding how to be coachable, understanding the expectations in the weight room. And so we have those in place. We don't necessarily have a manual for that, but you know what it looks like. And if there's any deviation from that, then that's when you have a problem that you have to address.
100%. And I think for you guys, you're at a point where the behaviors are being modeled so often within your program that you'd have to be blind not to see what the standard is. Mm-hmm. Versus, if you're a coach that's listening to this and you're like, oh, maybe I don't need to write my standards down. Listen, when this thing first started at Ohio State way back when, I'm sure that these standards were clearly explained and clearly understood, were verbalized more often. But you're at a point now where your culture is rolling that you refresh them. Like you just said, you refresh them, you instill it every offseason. We're going to talk about this stuff. But you don't have to remind guys of the red line, because you got other guys on the team that I'm sure are reminding them, right? And I'm sure that these things, it's coming from everybody. And so you're at a point now where it can be a little bit more player-led, that I think is something that a lot of coaches at times, and I keep saying a lot of coaches, I don't want to generalize people, but I think it gets missed. And I think people sometimes say, I want a player-led team, but what they don't realize is all the work that has to go in on the front end mm-hmm. of having a player-led team. Like you don't just take your hands off and say, go ahead. You know what I mean? And you can correct me if I'm wrong here. It's almost like there's a point in the great teams that I've been around and that I've had the opportunity to coach, regardless of sport. There was a point where they took the culture from me. I didn't give it to them. They took care. They took it. They said, we got this. You're good. And I think that's something, when you get to that point, then the standards can become more exactly what you're talking about, individualized. They can be, but they're still very transparent. Like you said, it's still KYP. It's still know your personnel and adjust accordingly. But it doesn't have to be a rule book, right? It doesn't have to be hey, here's 15 things that you need to do to be a Buckeye. Like it's not like that.
No. And in terms of that rule book, we as a strength staff, when I first got to Ohio State, I got a manual of the behaviors, the expectations, the standards for a strength coach. And so I read it in and out. I'm like, okay, boom. How do I make sure I follow these things? And so each guy that comes on board our staff, he gets the same book. Giving it to the players, we do, when it comes to leadership training, we give them that in writing.
Right.
And it's an actual workbook type session. But as far as the standards of the program, we make sure that we may post it on their locker. Mm-hmm. So we may write out certain standards when it comes to the culture and put that in their locker, especially if guys are having a hard time understanding or learning it, memorizing it. We have a standard for recovery. So what we did as far as for recovery, because our guys, they love to train, they love to work, but they're still learning the importance of recovery. So we made a small sheet, almost like a 5x7 sheet, and put it on each guy's locker, 4 tips on how to recover. And it's easy to see. It's in big bold letters. So every time they open up their locker, boom, they see it right there. And so that's a standard for recovery. And we hold them to that every single day with that. But it varies. So I think it starts, like you said, it starts with your culture. And then you hold them to that, but then it's different variations within your organization: recovery, training, nutrition, body weight, different things, and even leadership.
100%. And for the people listening that are trying to implement this type of stuff, what Quinn's saying here is you identify what we call in strength and conditioning KPIs, right? Key performance indicators. What are the things that play into the success of your organization? You label those things. So in Quinn's example with strength and conditioning, it's training, it's nutrition, it's recovery, it's all these things that fall in line with that. And then you identify those, and then you assign standards within each. So you have to find your areas of importance. So if this is your first time trying to lay out, a new culture for your organization, identify what's important. Identify, and to be honest with you, the best way to identify is what's the type of shit that's going to get you beat, right? If you don't do it, what are the things that are going to get us beat if we don't do this well? And usually those are your areas of importance. And then from there, you can add on top of it with your values, right? So some of the programs I've been around, it's extremely important to be active in the community. I know Ohio State, you guys do a great job being leaders along your campus, in Columbus, in the NCAA as a whole, right? You do a great job being leaders. So I know that that's an area of importance, but it's not necessarily where you start, right? That's probably added as a piece of your cultural standards and a piece of those other things. Mm-hmm. So each individual, arm or leg of your organization has to have their areas of importance, and then you can build upon that. I want to hit 3 real quick hitters with you, man. It's just going to be boom, boom, boom. Give me the first thing that comes to your mind. What does the word legacy mean to you?
To me, legacy means having something of value that you've created that you could pass on to the people that come behind you. So you spend time in an organization, what do you hope to be remembered by? And then what can the next person that comes in your seat, or the next person that comes through, what can they take that they learn from you that'll help advance them?
Love it. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that I was a person that I created experience for my athletes. So if you work with me, that I created experience with you, or experience for you, that you understood the importance of hard work. You understood the importance of knowing why you're doing what you're doing. You were educated, you were empowered, and you were prepared, not only for the rigors of your sport, but you were prepared for life after your sport.
Love it. What's the best piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
Ignore the distractions and keep your head down and work. And something so simple, but you have to stick to it, because there's so many things that can grab your attention that just aren't worth your attention. If you're worried about becoming the youngest head strength coach, you're worried about becoming the first this, the first that, then if anything, that's your ego driving you instead of your development. And I got caught up in that. And if I just keep my head down and work and be the best I can be at what I'm doing, whatever task I'm given, be the best I can be at that as possible, then those opportunities will come. And you'll be prepared for those opportunities. So keep your head down and work, ignore the distractions.
Love it. Last question, man, here. If you weren't coaching, where would you be? What would you be doing?
I'd be in a classroom. I'd be in a classroom. I love young people. I love I love seeing, I love watching people learn. And I love when people make connections to something that they've been taught. To see an athlete, that light bulb go on after you've used a specific analogy to get a point across, or they actually use what you taught them. I think that is one of the most fulfilling experiences ever. So I'd probably be in the classroom. What subject I'd be teaching, I have no idea. Maybe a counselor or something like that. But I'm understanding that teaching is my thing, and especially for young men. I feel like I believe that we don't have enough strong male influences around us. And if they are, then you know, it's hard to find them. And so you see a lot of broken families now. You don't see many fathers around, and it affects the children. It affects the family. So I want to make sure that if I can be a positive male influence in a young person's life, whether it's somebody I coach or if it's just in a mentor role through church or whatever community program, that's what I want to be. I want to be the example of a strong male that this young person, if it's a young man, he wants to be like, and if it's a young woman, is someone that she wants her husband to be like.
Yep. Absolutely, man. And that hits home for me because I'm a product of a single parent household. So as an African American male that comes up, without a father, one of the things that I learned at a very young age when I got into sports, and as I grew closer to my mentors and my coaches and stuff, and when I became a coach, I had one goal, and it was in every office that I've ever had. It's still something I tell everybody. I end most of my presentations with other coaches with this phrase, and that's be the man you needed. That's it. It's that simple. Be the man you needed, whether you are, like you said, mentoring a young man and you're trying to set an example for them. If you're mentoring a young woman, be the man that they needed in their life, or the man that they would want in their life later with those same characteristics. So it's so awesome. Quinn, man, this has been phenomenal. And it doesn't surprise me at all that you're doing what you're doing and that you're having the impact that you're having, just because having this conversation showed me so much about your character and who you are. And it really starts from the inside out, your leadership ability. So I can't thank you enough for taking the time, man. I'm going to give you the mic here for the last couple minutes. If there's anything you want to plug, any products, any social media stuff, any final message, whatever you want to give the people, man, the mic is yours.
Oh, David, I appreciate you. I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the listeners. I kind of stay behind the scenes. I like to stay behind the scenes. I enjoy being behind the scenes, and I like other people performing and watching them perform. So this has been an awesome experience, and I hope that this message, this podcast, it reaches at least one. As long as it reaches is one person, I'm good. So I really thank you all for the time. Thank you all, because I learned from this as well, and let's all get better together. I can easily be reached at Twitter, Instagram, at Quinn Barham, QuinnBarham is just my name, first name, last name. Same picture on each profile, the same. Try to keep it consistent. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Facebook, but yeah, Twitter and Instagram, that's where you'll find me. And I'm open to talking, more dialogue, and I'm open to anybody. Like I said before, I believe I can learn from anyone and everyone. So let's talk, let's continue the dialogue. And remember, it's not about us. It's about those that we serve.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, Quinn, man. We'll connect soon, and we'll make sure that everything that you guys talked about today, we'll link it up in the show notes as well. Make sure we got some quotes in there from you. Can't thank you enough, brother. We'll connect soon.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks. Again, that was Coach Quinn Barham, assistant strength coach at Ohio State. And that's one of those conversations that I think will go down as one of the best that we've had here on the Built Not Born podcast. To listen to Coach talk about how intentional the leadership development and the culture is at Ohio State, man, they leave nothing up to chance, and that's why they're so special and why they are continuously at the top of their game. You know, and to hear him talking about the principles that he learned at Ohio State and some of the other cultures that he's been involved in, there's no doubt that he has a deep understanding of how to develop leaders and how to develop young men and women. And so for anybody listening to this, man, please go back and double check some of that stuff and listen to it again, because he pretty much lays out the game plan for how to implement these types of things within your own program. So we can't thank Coach enough. And again, if you guys like what you hear, please subscribe, share, leave a review, do all those things so we can continue to bring you guys content like this. Until next time, leaders are built, not born.